If you've followed my story through professional hockey for any period of time, you'd know that I've had no shortage of hip, groin, and knee injuries that, in my opinion, have really held me back from reaching the heights of potential that I've wanted to in my career. But in January of 2023, I had hip surgery on my right hip that would hopefully correct all of those injuries. And fast forward over a year and a half later, it fixed all those issues and more in ways that I never thought were possible. From being able to move around the crease pain-free, accessing range that I never had before, and in the process grab a hold of some strength that I never thought I could get, and translating it into more control and more power in the crease, which as a pro, that means more saves, and more saves means more money in the bank, which are goals that I think we can all get behind. But in that journey, I also learned that my left side, that had never had an injury or a single issue up until that point in time, would soon become just as bad and get to that point that the right side was sooner than I ever imagined, and specifically my ankle. And I couldn't figure out why this was happening because, well, obviously I have two massive bone growths on my hips, and the injury-prone side had just been fixed, so that means there was only one place for all the imbalances to go, my other hip. And whether it was flexing too far forward in my stance, extending into saves, or worst of all, getting into a reverse VH, and considering that during the season we skate every single day, plus warm-ups, plus games, and that's a lot of accommodating an injury that I just wasn't planning for. And this became a real problem fast, which brings us to here in April of 2024.
So today's kind of a scary day. I had a meeting on the phone with my surgeon. He's like, hey, I got 1 day back in 2 weeks. Do you want it? I'll do your hip. I was like, yes. Like, even like right now, like my ankle's bothering me. And Matt Murray was telling me the same thing. And he just had both hips done. And he texted me the other day, I never felt better, dude. My ankles feel great. I'm moving great. Everything's awesome. I'm so happy I got both hips done. I'm like, damn it. I got one hip done. Now I need the other.
Now, if I'm being honest, I don't like making many life decisions that are huge on impulse. Matter of fact, I don't like making any of them. So I wanted to confirm what I thought was a good decision with this guy, Derek. He's my physiotherapist here in Vancouver, and he knows his stuff. Right here, he's explaining to me how my lack of internal rotation in my non-surgical hip is trickling down into my knee, and once that gets maxed out, it's going into my ankle. And when it's maxed out, the strain has to go somewhere, and my ankle is that pinch point, which realistically only left us with one solution to the problem. Yes, it could have been manageable throughout the season, but I'm preparing for the biggest season of my life heading back to Europe, and I'm not leaving anything to chances. So I headed down to the Vancouver airport, I hopped on a plane, landing in my birthplace in Winnipeg, Manitoba, to get this fixed once and for all. Now, just a warning, the video you're about to see isn't for the squeamish, because this is inside my hip, and it was the exact same issues as last time, a huge femoral bone growth with a grade 2 tear of the labrum, which you see getting anchored back into place right here. And Doc did tell me that the growth on this hip was actually bigger than the first hip. But all in all, the surgery went well. It's about a 3.5-4 hour process. And after that, I was on my way to recovery.
Oh yeah. Going fast. Hip surgery complete. Mostly pain-free. We're working to the bowels of Zerg's fortress. Smoker's ramp. Oh wow, look at this. It's beautiful. Beautiful day for a hip surgery.
He's nowhere near as bad as I thought, so it's okay.
Good news, hips fixed. Bad news, I didn't circumcise me like I asked.
Now, a quick question for you. Where does a one-legged waitress work? Well, IHOP, obviously. Alright, enough of the dad jokes. So, 2 to 3 days after the surgery, the bruising was at its worst. So this is what everything looks like. And you get a little ice machine as well that hooks up to your hip, ends up circulating cold water to get the inflammation down and just overall preventing any infections. If you ever followed Pecorine's process of his hip surgery, I think it was 2016, 2017, he had a huge inflammation and infection, which ended up prolonging his recovery time significantly. So we're trying to avoid that. And similar to my first surgery, I was at physio 5 days after, getting my hip moving again, and I think this is what people on my 600-pound life feel like, because after not moving my leg much for 4 to 5 days and just sitting on a couch, it feels so good to have somebody else do it for you. Also, I was on the bike and making some pretty good pacing, which you may not think you can do it after surgery, but 4 to 5 days after, I was feeling pretty good on the bike. And the next day, I took my mom for coffee because I love her very much, and then she dropped me off at the Winnipeg airport, which, by the way, only 7 days after surgery, I was walking pretty good through the airport and comfortable enough to fly. And I was heading back to where I live here in Vancouver to rehab this thing. Now, first day back at physio in Vancouver, this guy here is Gene. I don't really know his exact title at the office, but he's a beauty and he removed my stitches. And I was operating at a way higher capacity for round 2 compared to round 1, which you're going to see here because I was already able to squat just a little bit, doing light hip bridges. And a common theme moving forward here, because over the next 2 months, Derek and I worked on loosening things up, working through my range, and until I was able to get back on the gym with my trainer John at Level 10 Fitness in North Vancouver. Again, these are all the same guys that worked on me in my first go-around of surgery in 2023. And John and I here are focusing on putting some load-bearing capabilities on my hip. And fast forward to July 4th, which was 8 weeks after the surgery on May 1st, I was back on the ice in goalie skates, feeling great, working through some very basic movements in my feet. Granted, just in skates, but it was feeling good. Now, a huge element of speeding up my recovery the first go round was acupuncture. This here is Cyrus. She's my acupuncture doctor in Vancouver, and she's awesome. And keep in mind, although we have modern medicine, I essentially did get stabbed 3 times in the hip for the surgery. And as a natural defense mechanism, the body builds the scar tissue to protect that injured area, which, although I have this incredible range of motion, I mean, I've had it since day 1 of the surgery recovery. It's just a matter of loosening things up to be able to access it. The scar tissue keeps things really tight and hard to access it, so we're just trying to loosen things up and keep it nice and feeling comfortable. Open up some internal rotation range, because on July 17th, which is exactly 11 weeks to the day of my surgery, I was back on ice in full gear. About 6:30 in the morning, skate number 2, back from hip surgery, round 2. And for comparison, surgery round 1, I was back on the ice just short of 14 weeks and only doing basic movements from my feet. And although the goal in recovery is to never truly feel comfortable and continue to push for more range, skating here after 11 weeks felt really good. I would compare this probably to skating at about 4.5 months of the first surgery, so we're significantly ahead of schedule. I mean, I was even doing a few light integrations into the post just to put a little bit of load bearing, and that just continued to progress faster and faster as I went along. At the time of recording this video in August of 2024, I'm not feeling 100%, but I'm getting closer and closer every day. And although they say you never truly feel 100% until about 18 months after the surgery where everything is really running at its peak, I can say that my first surgery hip took about 6 months, 5.5, 6 months to feel that way, and I have a feeling that the new hip, the left side, is going to feel that significantly sooner. Yes, I'll continue to access range well into Christmas time, into the new year, but for the point in time that we're at now, I'm feeling really good, and I'm hoping for some big growths here. Keep in mind, I was able to go from basically no flare in my hips to solidify a post-to-post seal after the first surgery. Granted, I didn't have any mobility in it, but I was able to get post-to-post. I'm hoping this time to be able to be mobile in that position, so I can have some serious control and range of motion, especially through my upper body. And I'm also really excited to see how this new range in my lower body is going to free things up in my lower back and in my hands and in my shoulders to have better hands, better control, and being on top of pucks. Now, I've seen quite a few questions pretty consistently since the beginning of this process, from how did you know that you needed hip surgery? What were your symptoms? Do you have any advice for recovery? This is my first time. I'm scared. What do you think? And considering how much faster I was able to recover this time compared to last time, I have answers to all those. But first, a word from today's video sponsor, Manscaped.com. The team at Manscaped has introduced their brand new Lawnmower 5 for 2024 for all your below-the-belt grooming, and coupled with their Beard Hedger will get you absolutely dialed in this season for a glow-up like never before. I use the Beard Hedger's 20 trim lengths, 60-minute battery life, and waterproof design every week to taper and fade my beard in between appointments with my barber, and my Lawnmower 5.0 keeps me prepared to perform for all my date nights, and you can too when you use the code TRAVSUCKS20 for 20% off and free shipping when you click on that first link in the video description, only at manscaped.com. And thank you again, Manscaped, for sponsoring this video. So to answer all the questions top to bottom, I knew something was wrong because I couldn't stop getting injured with groin injuries and groin strains. And that eventually ended up making its way into my knee in the form of bursitis, which is essentially an inflammation of a fluid sac at the base of your knee, right kind of below the kneecap. And again, it may not seem like it's that bad. It's some of the worst pain I've had in my life, just the inflammation, the pulling, and the tenderness in that spot. And it was impossible to stop that without cortisone injections. And I had 3 cortisone injections in about a year. And I've had enough cortisone for a lifetime. I don't want any more of that. I also found that I had a lot of lower back pain because essentially the bone growths shred the labrum and make it impossible to properly use your glutes, which also why I've always had big legs but no ass, because I just couldn't use it. I wasn't able to use that muscle. I also had a lot of hip pain, specifically in the front, but I did find acupuncture was one of those things that was really good outside of steroid injections to help extend that shelf life and get a little bit more usage out of the injuries. As far as advice goes for fast recovery, I found that getting a collagen powder day 1 is big. I started using one about 4 months in the first recovery and from day 1 on the second recovery, and both times I noticed an immediate speed up in the healing process and the healing times. And considering how much collagen is actually in the hip area that's being operated on, it only makes sense. Also, listen to your body. I was sleeping 10 to 12 hours every single day the first 2 weeks of both surgeries, and if I felt my body needed something, I'd listen to it and I gave it exactly what it needed. If I felt like I could push more, I pushed. If I felt like, hey, it's getting tired, the muscle feels drained and need a little bit of a break, I did that as well. Just getting in tune with your body and listen to it, because it's giving you signals and it's giving you little whispers in your ear. It's your job to listen to it so that hopefully it doesn't get to a scream. I also think that a strong body truly is a strong mind, And I did not placebo myself into believing that I was injured or hurt this time the same way I was in the first process. With the first surgery, I was always of the mindset of you gotta be careful, I don't wanna ruin the surgery because I'm essentially made of glass now on the one hip, which really wasn't the case. And the second time, that wasn't even a thought in my mind. I didn't allow myself to think that, and I built this mental strength from upper body workouts, swimming, or doing whatever program was tabled by the professionals that I work with, whether it's Derek, John, or anybody in between. Staying active and staying and doing disciplinary worthy things and achievement worthy things built my mental toughness to say, it doesn't really matter what's going to happen, I'm doing difficult things, I'm going to recover from the surgery, I'm going to be at my best that you've ever seen me by the time this is 100%, and at the end of the day, I'm going to have a kick-ass season in Europe, and I can't wait to share that with you. Which, if you have any questions about the surgery, about pro hockey, whatever it is, you just want to chop it up, leave it in the comments section down below. I'll get back to you and try to help you as quickly as I can. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.